In your experience, what are some of the myths that parents believe, and what's your advice to them about these beliefs that they have?
Well, it goes to what I call the five most common mistakes of estranged parents. I mean, one belief is that it should be fair. Reality is, for most parents who've been cut off by their adult children, it isn't fair. Most of the parents who are being cut off these days are parents who are much more dedicated, probably, than their parents were. They probably spent more time with their kids, they're more psychological, they spent more money on them, they made more sacrifices for them. So in a fair world, they wouldn't be cut off. And so many parents feel like, when they're accused of being emotionally abusive or neglectful or whatever, they feel like, I actually was raised with real, I know this isn't true for me, but a lot of parents will say, I actually was raised with abuse. I can show you what an abusive parent looks like and it's not me, but that doesn't really persuade their child. So one myth is that it should be fair. I mean, it should be fair. It's just not going to get the parent anywhere. So what I commonly tell parents is, don't think about what's fair, think about what's strategic. You have to act in a way that's strategic. And part of that means not thinking about what's fair. Another common one is believing that using guilt is going to persuade your child to come back into contact with you. That ship has sailed. No longer, at least most parents in our culture, have the ability to remind their children of all the sacrifices that they made and all the ways that they were a good, dedicated parent, or maybe that the year before they wrote them a letter saying best mom ever, and now they're saying that they were, abusive in their rewriting childhood. So you can't use guilt. The third is returning fire with fire. The idea is, a lot of therapists will say, well, you have to stand up to your child and you have to, be much more assertive and don't let them talk to you that way. And that also is not going to be a pathway to reconciliation. The fourth is what you were saying earlier about that it's a marathon, not a sprint. And the fifth is that parents often feel like it's all about them. And I don't mean that in a narcissistic way, even though so many of these kids accuse their parents of being narcissistic. It's more that our adult children have their own lives. They're preoccupied with their own children or their marriages or their divorces or their careers or their friends. We're way down the list, even in the best of circumstances. It's what sociologists call the intergenerational stake difference. From parents' perspective, by the time we have children and grandchildren, our adult children and our grandchildren are really our central focus, but we're not our central, we're not their central focus. So we often personalize things that they're doing that in response to us that aren't necessarily personal. But then once we make them personal, then it is become a problem. So I think those are some of the five most common myths that I would say, mistakes anyway.